Hello, welcome to Pensions in 10 with me, David Brooks, and I'm delighted to be joined by my boss, Nigel Jones, to talk through our very special 100th episode. And we have a general chat around the challenges for the industry in the moment and for the next few years into the future. Okay, Nigel, so I think the first thing we'll talk about is the unbelievable achievement, I suppose, that we've made 100 episodes of Pensions in 10. I can't quite believe it. Never thought we'd get this far. What's been your impressions of Pensions in 10 as you've seen it rumbling away in the background, and as you say, signing off the invoices for the editing and everything?
I like you, Dave. I'm amazed you've made 100 episodes. I mean, 100 of anything is impressive. What's my impressions of Pensions in 10? Well, I haven't watched all 100 episodes. I have to confess. I have enjoyed the diversity of presenters in recent months. I think that's really added to it. I also think you've been fantastic. I don't say that lightly, as you know, but you've approached every single episode with such energy and positivity. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I'll probably struggle to find the energy to get through to the end of this 10-minute session, but you carry on regardless. And over the years, I've presented to all kinds of audiences, pension scheme members by the hundreds, the DWP, TPR, the PPF, even football supporters, and they're a tough crowd. But surely nothing can top Pensions in 10. So for me, it's downhill from here.
Well, we've peaked. It's having you on is going to be. We'll look back and go, well, yeah, that was the peak, definitely. It's all gone rubbish. No, I really appreciate you saying that, Nigel, to be honest.
Absolute pleasure. And I mean it.
Well, no, I mean, it's just, I do like to try to bring a bit of energy to pensions. Anyone who's known me, I've worked with over the last 30 odd years in pensions, kind of gets, I have a real passion for it. I do genuinely care about having a good pensions system, and like you, looking after the members and helping trustees. I get a lot of satisfaction from doing that. Working hard to stay up to date with all the stuff that's going on, and then being able to try to explain it to people in a way that they can relate to, understand. Within 10 minutes is hard because you're going to skip bits and have to paraphrase. But hopefully I'll get the sort of the general gist of what's going on across. So that's always been the goal. And the feedback from people has been fantastic. I was at a dinner the other day and someone said, "Oh, I love your videos." It was someone who doesn't like them and share them and all that stuff. And I know I go on that too much. It'd be lovely to get a little bit of, but if people do watch them and listen and enjoy them, that's all I can ask for. Okay, Nigel, so we're doing something a little bit different in this 100th episode. We're just going to take a bit of a step back rather than covering any news that's happened in the last few days. So, Nigel, I don't know, just given your role at Broadstone and your sort of, you have to look over strategically everything that's going on in the world of pensions. Just wanted to get your views at the moment and what you see as the big challenges facing the industry and trustees.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. This is a really tricky one because we've got a highly developed pensions industry. We all know what we're doing, and I don't mean that glibly, but we do. Professional trustees, strong advisors, well-developed investment strategies and what have you. And I think challenges, where I would probably start, and not linked really to pensions, is on income tax. And I got to this point having listened to Rachel Reeves on the radio driving in this morning. When Nick Robinson let her get a word in, let's face it. But, I've also read the proposal by the Resolution Foundation, which I think is a left-leaning think tank. I could be wrong there. But they're proposing a 2% increase in income tax across the board. I think that's a very sensible way to plug some of our fiscal deficit. We're tinkering around the edges, putting the burden only on select groups, which are already tightly squeezed. And I think increasing the tax take across the board is the way forward. Higher earners would pay more anyway. What's this got to do with pensions? Well, it's about raising taxes on pensioners, and I think there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Yes, we need to avoid issues with impoverished pensioners, but we just deal with that separately and decouple it from a general income tax rise. I think the only issue is the media portrayal of the average pensioner and the political fallout from that. And you know what I mean. The female version is the frail, kindly old woman, probably with a stoop and carrying a large handbag containing most of her worldly possessions and laden down with shopping bags to boot. And my late grandmother, to be fair, checked all of those boxes with flying colours. The male version is the military veteran, as we know, stiff upper lip, array of medals pinned to the chest, and to tax these people is an affront to good British morals and society. But in truth, I would think 90% of pensioners don't fit this stereotype. Most are nicely off, sat on house equity, had free education at source, good DB pensions. I mean, if we put up Alan Sugar or, say, Theresa May as our pensioner representatives, would we then argue in the media about whether a 2% tax rise is fair or not? I think that the rhetoric may be a little bit different. Now, I accept it's a manifesto promise not to raise tax or individual NI, but again, I would think, so what? Previous governments have made exactly the same promises, but then they just freeze or lower thresholds, which is basically an income tax rise by the back door. So I think it's a no-brainer and would make such a difference to the country's finances. And some of those monies raised could be targeted at those pensioners, unlike Theresa May et al., who really do need the money. So, I mean, that's where I would go.
Yeah. No, I think it's getting some definitely warm reception. So I think it was just to make sure it's clear, it's like a 2% income tax swap for the NI income charge.
Yes.
So that does flip it quite strongly towards the pensioner end of the market. And I think it's we talked before, offline when we talk about pensions as we do, like the triple lock, the cost of that, again, is getting a lot of attention, and it feels like it's been the protected policy for the last 15 years that no one dare go near for fear of upsetting pensioners. And I do think something does need to change. And like you say, that rhetoric around the worry about frail pensioners being penalised for something that, but they probably wouldn't feel it because it would be happening to people who are earning a lot more. So yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see if Rachel does this at the budget. We've still got a few more weeks. I think it's 50 odd days until the budget, so we'll see what comes through. Okay, Nigel, just for our final, again, we're not doing news stories. We'll just have a little think about what's the big challenges as you see them, again, in the industry for the next couple of years. What are we going to be tackling and dealing with?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one because we generally much improved funding positions, as we know, through the rising gilt yield. Schemes maybe are finally enjoying a period of calm after all of the tougher years they've battled through. I remember doing actuarial valuations right back to 2006 as a scheme actuary, and things were good then, and then global financial crisis came along, and up until the gilt yield crisis, lots of crises, up until the gilt yield crisis 2 years ago, those 15 years were really quite difficult. But I think we're in a much better position. And there is potentially some nice new things coming online, as you know, over the next 2 years. Surplus release powers potentially coming, a new framework for consolidators. So some really different developments on the horizon and schemes for once in a position to take advantage of those. It doesn't mean that those schemes that are prepared for buyout and ready now shouldn't carry on along that track, especially as pricing looks good at the moment too. And buyout is probably the preferred outcome for many schemes, But again, with other options on the horizon, I just think retaining flexibility in terms of your end game option is important at the current time. So, in the meantime, what do you do? Well, we could and should be getting on with GMP equalization and other data management. If you look at the Lloyd's ruling, that was October 2018. So that's 7 years ago now, which is a pretty damning indictment of all things GMPE. And we just need to be pushing on and doing GMP equalization now, as well as improving governance, doing all of those data pieces. But actually reflect and enjoy being in a period of calm, I think is a good place to be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a very different world than the world I joined in the 21st century, beginning of the 21st century. Yeah, it's a different mindset for the trustees to get into, and yeah, sort of, like you say, the pricing is good, but take stock. If you get your investment strategy in the right place, there's not necessarily a need to rush. You can get your data sorted, get the best price, and do things in an orderly way, and try and sort out some of the legacy issues that have been kicking around the industry for years we've never had time to deal with. There's now probably a bit more scope on the trustee board, to-do list to focus on that. If I may just take a little bit to ask the question of me, what I think are the big issues for the next few years. I think my concern is more sort of on the DC side. Some of the things in the pensions bill around targeted support for people and guided retirement. I think they're going to be the things that are going to dominate a lot of the conversations in the pensions industry around how we support people to make those big decisions as they manage their money through the growth phase when they're paying money in and then taking their money out, and when to do that, and how that fits in with wider pensions policy of state pension age, labour changes within labour markets, and how people's careers are going, and how you can make your pension fit your life, because the flexibility is now there to be able to do it in that way. But how people do that is incredibly daunting, I think, and sometimes that almost infinite number of options, to decide what you should do with your pension, can also be paralysing for people. So I think the real challenge in the industry is getting that communication piece right. And as we targeted support is meant to sort of pigeonhole people a little bit into sort of certain cohorts to see what sort of communication they want. That's going to be incredibly hard to do that effectively and not be contradictory. People are being funneled into different routes, and the industry working together, I think, is going to be a big challenge. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that develops over the next few years.
So Dave, we're closing in on the end of episode 100, and I have to say it's been surprisingly enjoyable sharing the forum with you. It's been actually a really good chat. So hopefully you'll invite me back for episode 200, but actually that's 2 years away. Maybe 150. Who knows?
Okay.
But in closing, 100 episodes, it is fantastic. Great achievement. So my question of you would be, what is your one favourite moment from all of those 100 episodes? And you only get one, and if you try to sneak in another, I will cut you off.
Okay, yeah. Just edit out, if you're carrying talking. You asked me, you told me you were going to ask me this, and I've really struggled to try to think of like one thing, because there's so many. There's so many interactions with individuals that I've really enjoyed. Getting the new presenters in has been fantastic, because getting a different dynamic and a different take on a lot of the stories that I think are interesting, or them coming to me with things that they found that they think are interesting that perhaps I missed or didn't see the interest in. So I think that's the bit I just love. I just really enjoyed being part of the industry conversation. Just enjoyed giving my views. Some of the sort of the nerdy stuff about the ombudsman are really good fun to get your teeth into. But then the things we talk about, the big picture items, the direction of policy, and what the system will look like in 10, 15, 20 years' time, I think is incredible to think about as well. So I think it's being able to have the time to do the little stories that are just mean something right now, something quite niche perhaps, but also those big picture stories that will affect the way we work into the future. So I think it's the ability to do those things are my highlights. If I'm allowed a plural, just.
Thanks, Dave.